Number 4, 5, and 6 here. It says at the beginning of January, Barbara Scott's heating oil tank held 52 1/4 gallons of heating oil. At the end of the month, it held 9 1/10 gallons. How many gallons did she use during the month? So if this was our starting and this is our ending, we can subtract to figure out the difference. How much did we use in the month? So I'm going to do 52 1/4. I'm going to subtract 9 1/10. And again, since I'm subtracting fractions, I have to have a common denominator. And with a 10 and a 4, my least common denominator is 20. So 4 goes into 20 5 times, I get 5/20. 10 goes into 20 2 times. And in this case, we can take 2 away from 5, so we're just going to subtract. 5 minus 2 gives me 3/20. And then I have to subtract with my whole numbers. Make that a 4, borrow, make that 12. 12 minus 9 is 3, and so I get 43 3/20 for how many gallons I used. And so again, if I wanted to check that with my calculator, I'm just subtracting 52 fraction 1 fraction 4th minus 9 fraction 1 fraction 10th, and I get 43 3/20. Number 5, at the beginning of August, Tom Jenkins had accumulated 24 1/2 days of sick leave, but he was sick with the flu and missed 7 7/8 work days during the month. How many days does he still have at the end of the month? So again, I started with 24 1/2, but I used some of them up, so I'm going to subtract them off. 8 7/8. My common denominator here, since 2 does go into 8, is 8. 2 goes into 8 4 times 1 is 4/8. 1/2 is the same thing as 4/8. And here the 7/8 isn't going to change. But our problem here is going to be that I can't take 7 away from 4. So this time when I'm borrowing, I'm not borrowing in terms of 10. I'm borrowing in terms of eighths, because 8 is my denominator. So what I do is I go over to my whole number and I take 1 off of there. That makes that 23 instead of 24. But when I add 1, I'm going to add it in terms of eighths. So whatever my denominator is, I'm going to have the same number over itself. 1 is equal to 8/8 or 7/7 or 10/10 or 5/5, whatever it may be. So that 4/8 plus 8/8 gives me 12/8, which is the same thing as having 1 and 4/8. Now I can take 7 away from 12. 12 minus 7 gives me 5/8, and I'm going to subtract 8 from 23. So here I make that a 1 and borrow, and 13 minus 8 is 5, so I get 15 5/8. So again, just to double check, I would take 24 fraction 1 fraction 2 minus 8 fraction 7 fraction 8ths, and I get 15 5/8, which is sure enough what I'm supposed to end up with. So the hard thing here when you borrow was when you have to borrow 1, same number over itself. Whatever the denominator is over itself is added to your fraction. Number 6, Marston Real Estate purchased 75 1/3 acres of land on the west side of town. The company planned to use 67 1/6 acres for residential development. The remainder of the property will be given to the city for a park. How many acres will be given to the city? So we have 75 1/3, but we're going to use part of it for development, 67 1/6. We want to know how much they have left for the park to be. So again, subtracting fractions, we have to have a common denominator. 3 does go into 6. So 3 goes into 6 2 times 1. 1/3 is 2/6. The 6/6 doesn't have to change, and fortunately on this one we can take 1 away from 2, so we don't have to borrow. 2 minus 1 is 1, so we get 1/6. And then we have to subtract. We have to borrow here. 15 minus 7 would be 8, and so 8 1/6 is what we have left over. So again, 75 fraction 1 fraction 3rd minus 67 fraction 1 fraction, whoops, I hit the wrong button, fraction 6, gives me 8 1/6, which is what we ended up with.